Okay. Sorry, no robe, no hood, no taped up hands this time. Okay, it's just gonna be a straight read. Have your notebooks out. Take notes as we go along. Okay, we're gonna read 2 short chapters. 14 was pretty long. Remember, keep your journals, your dialectic journals. Keep working on them. A lot happens in 14. It's Alfred's first fight. We get to see what his day is like as he prepares for his first fight, things he has to go through. What leads up to it, Spoon has a role, more prominent role in chapter 14. Henry has a more prominent role. And we find out what happens in Alfred's first fight. Okay, his first fight is a professional, well, I wouldn't say professional, as an amateur, okay, because it's only a 3-round fight. Amateurs fight 3 rounds, just like in the Olympics. They're all 3-round fights, that's it. So before you become a pro, get paid, he's got to start out as a amateur, Alfred, okay? Let's read chapter 15. Aunt Pearl jumped up. Your face, Alfred, you're limping. Looks worse than it is, he said. Here, sit down. You want something to eat? Just some milk. She poured a glass of milk and set it on the table in front of him. She sat down and watched him drink it. Want some more? No, thanks. You want some aspirin or... I took some already. Doctor gave it to me. I'll get your bed ready. He played with the glass. Thought you have a million questions. So you could tell me about the old stone fence off Lennox? A big dog jumped up, right, honey? The first time he lied to his Aunt Pearl when Major, Sonny, and Hollis beat him up, told him that he fell off a fence. She knew he was lying then, okay? The split in his lip opened again when he smiled. Yeah, I had to find out he was having a boxing fight from Mr. Epstein. Thought you might try and stop me. You're getting to be a man, Alfred. I stop you from one thing, you'll do something else. You said you didn't like my boxing. I still don't. Seems an awful shame. 2 men got nothing against each other, go in and try and beat each other's head. I don't know about nothing else. Before the summer, you didn't know about boxing neither. I guess I'll have some more milk. She leaned over his shoulder and filled his glass. When I was 17, Alfred, don't look at me like that, I was 17 too, a man came by the house. He was from the Apollo Theater. Now the Apollo Theater is still a theater in New York City. It's in Harlem. It's a landmark. They still have shows they put on there, singing, dancing, comedy. It's a world famous theater in Harlem. Okay. Said he heard me singing in the church choir. Wanted to sign me up for a stage show. No star part, you understand. And be in a chorus. Wear a fancy dress. They teach me some dance steps. She walked around the table holding the milk container with 2 hands. Was we ever excited? Me and Dorothy and Ernestine, your mama. So we find out now that Alfred's mother's name is Ernestine. Couldn't sign a contract because I was underage, and my mama, your grandma, wouldn't sign for me. She said that stage shows were sinful. Be shameful, one of her daughters strutting around showing off. I end up no good. She sat down, her fingers tightening on the container. How I talked with her, and I cried, and Dorothy and Ernestine, they begged her too. The more we begged, the harder she set her face. Sinful, shameful, no good. You never told me about that, said Alfred. No secret. You just always been so closed into yourself, Alfred. What happened? Nothing. The man went away. I met your Uncle John, and we went together a long time before my mom would give her blessing. Blessing means that they could be married. How that man worked. Night and day he worked. We got married, and he got sick soon after Charlene came along. He never did get to see the twins. Passed on a month before they came. Her hands tightened and twisted on the container, and milk spurted out onto her lap. Alfred came around the table and put his hands on Aunt Pearl's shoulders. He would have been real pleased with them. Nice girls, he said softly. She was sobbing. I don't say I would have been a star or anything. I don't know what I'm saying. But you would have liked to try, said Alfred. Yes. He held her shoulders until they stopped heaving. Thanks, Alfred. You're a comfort. She wiped her eyes and looked up at him. I didn't even ask if you won your fight. I won it. She reached up and stroked his face. And it didn't even taste sweet, the winning, did it, honey? No. You're going to quit this thing now? No. Okay? So in this chapter, we find out about Aunt Pearl, a little bit about her. She had an opportunity to sing on a stage. Very good singer. We know she goes to church. She sings in the church choir. But her mama said no. She doesn't like Alfred fighting. She wants Alfred, she'd rather he did anything else but be a fighter. But she knows how she felt when she was 17 and her dreams were taken away from her by her mother. She doesn't want to do this to Alfred. Okay, she wants him to go for it, but she still has her reservations. But she knows how devastated she was when she was denied the opportunity to sing on stage. And maybe, who knows, go on to Broadway. Okay? And we also find out Alfred's not happy. Alfred's not happy about the fight. Even though he won. Okay? He won. Who did he beat? Who did he beat? Okay, good. Even though he's not happy about the fight, he's still not ready to give it up yet. Chapter 16. Now, this is Alfred's second fight. Griffin was light and fast. His gloves were a red blur, tapping away at Alfred's face, easy and steady as rain on a roof. Pitter-pat, pitter-pat. Alfred's eyes began to swell and his nose was clogged with dried blood. Donatelli and Henry and Bud were screaming, "Rush him! Press! Press!" But every time he fired out his jab, Griffin brushed it aside. By the end of the first round, his face felt as if it had been stung by 100 bees. "Attack! Attack! 2 hands!" said Donatelli in his ear, and Bud slapped an ice bag against his face. Henry kneaded the muscles of his back. "Go after him, Alfred!" He tried to explain it to the ice bag about the red blur and Griffin's speed, but the bell rang. It started again, pitter-pat, pitter-pat, and somebody in the crowd was laughing. He swung wildly, a foot over Griffin's head, and the red blur was back, tapping away at his chin, his eyes, his mouth, his nose. He tried to remember his combinations. Left, left, cross, hook, but Griffin's skinny arms knocked his punches away. And then the blur again, pitter-pat, pitter-pat, until he was sure that Griffin had 3, maybe 5 hands at work, all needles and pins stabbing at the bee bites. The bell rang. "This is it," said Henry, tilting the water bottle. "Go for the KO. Only chance to win. Knock his head off." Okay, KO means, right, knockout. 3 rounds. This is the last round of the fight. Alfred's losing the fight. Pitter-pat, pitter-pat. Not quite so fast now. There were only 2 red gloves, and sometimes he could see them before they tapped against his face. Griffin was breathing hard. He's tired, Alfred thought. Tired from hitting me so much. 1 red glove grazed his ear. The first time Griffin missed all night. Rush him, they screamed from the corner. Somewhere Alfred found a little extra strength. He reached all the way down for it, and the next time the red glove missed, he threw his weight behind a short right uppercut. Griffin stopped cold, a pink blotch on his chest. Alfred swung the hook, everything behind the hook. It slammed into Griffin's jaw. Thunk. Pain shot up Alfred's wrist and exploded in his shoulder. Griffin went down and flopped over like a rag doll. Which is an example of what literary technique? That's right. It is a simile. Griffin twitched once, then lay very still on the canvas. The referee's counting. 9, 10. Winner by knockout. Second fight Alfred fights, he wins it by knocking out his opponent. Bud and Donatelli were holding his arms and Henry was hugging him, but he felt alone and sick. He swallowed back the bitter taste, broke free, and ran across the ring. So Alfred knocks this guy out. Mr. Donatelli, Bud Martin are in the ring with him. He breaks free. He wants to go see the guy he just knocked out, how he's doing. "Where are you going?" asked the referee, blocking him. "Want to see him." "Later. Next bout's coming right in." "Now," said Alfred, dodging around the referee. Griffin was being pulled to his feet. Alfred says, "Are you okay?" "Huh?" Alfred says, "I'm sorry I hit you so." "Forget it, kid," said one of Griffin's handlers. "Lucky punch." "Come on, Alfred." Donatelli's fingers were on his arm, pulling him back across the ring. Alfred kept looking over his shoulder as they slapped Griffin awake and helped him down the ring steps. All the way up the aisle, people stood up and shook their fists and tugged at his robe and cheered. He kept his eyes straight ahead and his mouth tightly closed. He was afraid he might throw up. "Let's look at those eyes," said Donatelli, pushing him down on a dressing room bench. "Just swollen," said Bud, pressing the ice bag against them. "No damage." "Beautiful hook," said Henry. "Was that ever a beautiful hook?" "He just lay there," said Alfred. "That's part of it," said Donatelli. "Like a dead man." "It's happened, Alfred." Bud took the ice bag away and looked at Donatelli. They stared at each other for a long time before Bud shook his head and Donatelli shrugged. Why do you think Bud shakes his head and Donatelli shrugs? We'll talk about this in class tomorrow, but I want you to think about it. Okay, what's Alfred's... They're not happy about something with Alfred, okay? And we'll talk about it tomorrow. See if you guys can figure it out on your own. The sound of the hook against Griffin's jaw, the dull, meaty thunk, echoed in his mind all the way home in Spoon's car. He heard it in the kitchen, trying to sleep, trying not to see the rag doll flop endlessly to the canvas. He didn't sleep. He left the apartment early, before Aunt Pearl woke up. He didn't want to talk about it over breakfast. He walked through the park, careful to avoid the two policemen. But there was no way to avoid Lou Epstein when he finally went to work. 2 wins in a row, Alfred. Yeah. You don't look so good. You want the day off? Nah, I'm okay. There was only a few customers that morning. It was hard to concentrate. His fingers were stiff on the cash register keys, and every time he looked up, Griffin was flopping off a shelf of canned goods. Thunk, Lucky Punch, Beautiful Hook, Pitter Pat, No Sale, Pop Pop Pop. And there was Rivera, and the crowd was screaming, "Get in there and fight, black boy, coward." Twice he rang up wrong totals and had to call Jake over to unlock the cash register and correct the receipt roll. All the hate was out in the crowd, he thought, screaming for blood, for a knockout. And the crowd didn't really care who flopped over like a rag doll, Griffin, Rivera, Brooks, anybody. Go on, Alfred, take the rest of the day off. I'm all right, Mr. Epstein. Argue I don't, Alfred. You're fired until tomorrow morning, 8:30. So he sends Alfred home because Alfred can't focus at work. All he's thinking about is the night before, hitting Griffin, Griffin going down, knocking him out. Okay, this bothers him. He can't sleep. He can't focus on anything. He's not really fired. Mr. Epstein just says, "Go home, Alfred. Go home and rest. Come back tomorrow." He felt a little better on the street. A brisk November wind tugged at his jacket, and he pulled his cap down over his forehead. It was nearly noon, but the sun was neither warm nor bright. The few people on the street were moving quickly. Across the street, in front of a school gate, 2 heavily dressed figures were handing out leaflets. One of them waved. "Brooksy! Hey, Brooksy! Over here!" What do you think that is? Right, Harold and Lynn. He shoved his hands into his jacket pockets and strolled over. Harold was smiling. His eyes were friendly behind his horn-rimmed glasses. Lynn seemed very small and slim, bundled into a tweed coat. "Hi, Alfred," she said. "We were just talking about you." "How's that?" She handed him a leaflet. "Harold was saying how much he'd like to get you involved in our new recreation program." "That's right," said Harold. "The kids would really look up to a boxer." "I've only had 2 fights." "It doesn't matter. At least you've done something." So this is the kind of place that Alfred lives in. There's nothing positive going on. Alfred is a high school dropout, works in a grocery store, amateur fighter. He's only fought twice, but these kids feel, Harold and Lynn feel, that if Alfred comes and works at their rec center, kids will come because of Alfred, because he's done something. Granted, it's not a whole lot, but it's his climb, okay? Alfred, again, he's continuing his climb, step by step by step. And they think Alfred would be a good fit for this, I've lost my, good fit for the center, the rec center that they want to run for the kids. "Don't have much time now. Think about it anyway," said Lynn. A bell rang inside the school. "I will," said Alfred, but Harold and Lynn had already turned and begun handing their leaflets to the children streaming out into the street. He walked on, surrounded by skipping, laughing children. He thought of Rick, the white college boy he and James had liked so much. Alfred half closed his eyes. "Okay, you little kids, gonna do some push-ups and trunk twisters, and James here is gonna tell you some funny stories." Again, even though James is not a part of his life for a while now, he still thinks and misses James. But James was trembling in the clubroom corner, ripping open his heroin bag, and the crowd was screaming for him to kill Rivera, and Griffin was flopping over like a rag doll. It was too early to go up to the gym, and he didn't feel like watching afternoon television. He dropped Lynn's leaflet into a trash barrel and headed toward 125th Street in a warm movie. Okay, that was chapter 16. Again, we talked about a lot of symbolism, and remember the movies are also symbolic of something. Okay, we talked about it in class. You remember? Okay, good. His escape from reality. People go to movies to escape, okay, and to live it with the actors. Remember Ponyboy? He goes to the movies. Same thing. Same thing with Alfred. Okay, there are some similarities between the 2 books. Okay, Alfred goes to escape and live it with the actors, see what's going on. Okay, just to get away from the world that he lives in. All right, good job. See you in the morning.